Hello and welcome to Talking Automotive with Mark and John. My name is John Sinclair and my co-host Mark Palavestra.
Hi John. Today we've got a very interesting speaker. We've got Michael Winkler, who is a 40 plus year industry oracle of the automotive business. Michael joins us today from Flipacar, which is an online application that optimizes the used car transaction process.
What's really interesting for me is that used car space and the opportunity it can bring to a traditional space and improve the efficiency and the profitability of a process in the dealership. So really great listen. So let's jump into it.
If you like what you hear today, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on iTunes and Spotify, and our website autocurrents.com.
With 30 years experience in auto logistics and state-of-the-art locations in 5 major Australian cities, Precar Fleet Services is an independent division of Precar Services, offering specialty fleet fit-outs for commercial applications ranging from simple tray and tow bar fitments to fully bespoke service body and accessory installation. With quality-assured safety, compliance and standardisation of vehicle builds, Precar Fleet Services are a premier all-in-one solutions provider for commercial vehicle fleet operators, leasing companies, and original equipment manufacturers. For further information on how Precar Fleet Services can assist in solving your commercial vehicle fit-out needs, please visit precar.com.au and click on the link to Fleet Services.
Modera is a cloud-based, AI-powered CRM and retail platform aimed at digitizing the physical process of selling a car. The Modera platform sits between existing automotive dealer and OEM systems, providing car dealerships a quick and easy shift to digital ways of working, all done entirely digitally and with total ease.
Michael, thanks very much for joining the show. Great to have you on. Maybe to start off with, can you just tell us a little bit about Michael Winkler and a bit of your backstory?
Well, I'm not sure how much there is to tell. I mean, I've been in this industry, I suppose now for over 40 years. I started originally as a technician apprentice in a place in North America, in Nevada, a little town called Reno, down the hill from Lake Tahoe. I ended up there in 1979 when my father specifically, ended up as a professor at the university there. And we immigrated to there from Germany. One of the typical stories, the family wanted to go there for 1 year, and my parents still live there today. So after high school, went an apprenticeship, had the chance to become a salesman at a independent dealership that was kind of a broker through that phase in the 80s when certain GM cars were hard to get. For instance, 3/4-ton pickup trucks for farmers and ranchers and those sort of things. So in a way, I ended up selling pickup trucks to North American Indians, if you will, as a young man. And then and had the chance very early on when Porsche decided to, ironically, sever ties with Volkswagen in the US and start their own distribution company. They chose Reno as a distribution headquarters. And I ended up as a 21-year-old with a job there. Also the intention, do it 1 or 2 years, build a resume, and then move on with life. And that then turned into a 29-year stint with them. I was very lucky, spent 7 years in the US with them in various functions. Then 4 years back at the factory in the early 1990s. And in 1995 was assigned to come to Australia to become MD of Porsche Australia, which to perhaps put that into some perspective, the business had just been taken over by the Porsche factory from the Hamilton family here in Australia. Norman Hamilton was, interestingly, the oldest overseas Porsche importer in the world. In fact, he financed Ferry Porsche to make the first right-hand drive 356s. So the first right-hand drive 356s actually came to Australia and not to the UK, something very few people know. Make a long story short, recession in the early 90s, the business was a little bit in trouble. Porsche factory decided to take it over, and I ended up here running it. To put some perspective to the figures at the time, when I arrived, just coming out of the recession of the early 90s, there were just under 100 registrations countrywide of Porsches in that year. We were actually tasked at the time with trying to perhaps find a buyer for the business. Myself and a couple of other guys who are still there today, we were young and wet behind the ears, and we decided, well, we can try to make this work somehow on our own. We made the proposal to the factory, and then the factory decided that, well, if those youngsters think they can make it work, we better keep it. And then one thing led to the next. The Boxster was introduced, the Porsche 993, 911 first was introduced, then the Boxster, and then the 996. And of course, then 6 years later, the first Cayennes were introduced. And from that, really, it was history. And it was the right decision to hold on to the business. And it's very successful today, as you know, with somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 cars a year that the company sells here. So that was the story there. And then ironically, in 2009, Porsche and Volkswagen merged again in a bit of an industrial drama. First, Porsche trying to take over Volkswagen, and then went the other way around. In the course of that, then the philosophy changed a little bit in the company. Is that rather than wanting people to be in the overseas jobs, very secure and very long time representing the name, it became a bit more, dare I say, corporate normal. And the desire was to rotate people through the MD's jobs. And for family reasons, then I decided that I wanted to stay in Australia and left Porsche in 2013. I went to Jaguar Land Rover for about 2 years, and then received a call from a friend, old colleague at Porsche, who had become the CEO of Bentley, to come join them and look after the North American and South America region for him, which I saw. We went to America for 2 years and did that. And again, for family reasons, came back. I ended up with the Sagami organization for a couple of years. And then just in time for COVID, decided it was time to perhaps do some travel and do some things around the world, which of course then didn't eventuate due to travel lockdowns and so on. One thing leading into another, I stumbled across the opportunity of what I'm doing now, and here I am.
That's an amazing story, Michael. So you're further evidence that proves that the best sales guys actually come from after sales.
Yes,
having that technical background. That's an incredible trait.
You can draw that bow if you like. Albeit I am actually quite happy now that I don't have to get my hands dirty anymore.
As most after sales guys don't want to after at least 5 years in the trade. It's like get someone else to work on the car. But it's that grounding and understanding the automobile.
Yeah, well, that and I think being a salesman on the sales floor, particularly in that environment that I was describing. I mean, I was only half joking saying pickup trucks to North American Indians. I mean, if you know U.S. a little bit, Nevada, outside of Las Vegas, it's very much a rural area. And farmers and ranchers are very grounded people as well. And frankly, if you want to survive in that environment, you cannot be SEO by through it. I mean, you have to be authentic in what you do. And that was a very good school, I thought.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, I'm keen to get an understanding about Flipacar. So we've gone through the COVID environment, and there's a lot of things happening in the industry around vehicle sourcing and used cars in particular. So I'm keen to get an understanding about the backstory to Flipacar.
I stumbled across it in late or mid 2020. And it was coincidence, just through sharing an office, and I will say within my 5 kilometer radius, with a couple of other guys in similar situation, actually. In one particular case, we came across the opportunity. A tech was presented to us that was mostly developed, and we saw it as an opportunity to, I suppose, disrupt, for lack of a better term, the wholesale industry. And the core of the idea that was presented to us was really the ability to very quickly, without fuss, load cars onto an app by simply using the number plate and a couple of pictures, all the data being pulled in through available data sources. and being able to push that car then out to a wholesale market literally within minutes. When we saw that as a core, we thought, well, we've myself and my partners, if you will, had spent the last 20, 30, 40 years in various aspects of the industry. Myself and what I was doing, one of my partners, Abe Thomas, in the financing and leasing area. And we thought that this is really, we've spent time and money in our past career really dragging our respective organizations that we were involved with and retail businesses, trying to drag them into the 21st century, in some cases kicking and screaming. But what basically the industry by and large has achieved a certain digitalization in the front end of the business. I mean, every brand has the ability to somehow connect with customers through digital means. Some brands more sophisticated than others, but everybody has some sort of means of doing that. Certainly finance companies, low-rated lease providers, fleet companies and so on also engage with their customers digitally on the front end. But the back-end process, in other words, the disposal of vehicles, whether it's a customer's trade-in on the retail in the transaction of trading a car in for exchanging it to a new car, or whether it's a finance company taking a car back into inventory from a no-rated lease, a lessee, or any other scenario, those processes are still very, very analog. Particularly in the retail world, as well, if you consider as your typical processes that if you trade a car in with a dealer who does not want to keep it to retail as a used vehicle, somebody in the back office, usually a used car manager or a wholesale manager, will end up on the phone with 5 or 6 or 7 usual trusted friends and suspects to try to get a price and find a way to move the traded car on. That is still all done by telephone and paper trail. And we felt that we had a methodology here to really energize that part of the business, disrupt it, as I said, and drag that part into the 21st century as well.
So, Michael, what are the main problems you try and address? So you mentioned a bit now about taking them through to the 21st century in terms of taking away some of the paperwork, but what do you think are the core problems you resolve for the dealer?
If you think about really the core process of a car getting traded and the dealer deciding not to want to keep it, the usual is, well, first of all, it's how do you establish a price? That's where the phone calls start. And then somebody may or may not make a commitment already to purchase that car that is being traded. Usually it's just a trusted source giving a price, or an internet-based source of some description giving an estimated price for the car, usually based on algorithms rather than real trading information. So you're making a decision that is sort of a bit of a guess when you put a price on the car to give them to the customer as a trade-in and changeover valuation. Then what you typically do is you put the car out the back someplace. Quite often it gets forgotten for a couple of weeks. Then somebody remembers. Then the phone calls start again, or the car is taken to an auction house. In that particular case, transport costs are necessary, a further sort of cleanup cost, some reconditioning perhaps before the car goes to the auction lane and gets auctioned off. And then you'd have to wait a little bit of a while to get your money. Whereas what we're providing here with what we're proposing is, and what we've developed, is you can literally put the car out to auction still while the customer who's looking at a new car is test driving. You can get a firm bid on it, you can get a commitment, and after you've done the transaction with the customer, within 24 hours, you can have the car shipped off to the winning bidder and receive your money. So you're cutting out days, if not weeks, of time and money tied up. I mean, think of the capital that you free up by accelerating the process to that point, rather than having to go store something out the back and the process I just now described. I think it's particularly relevant for those brands who've decided to become, or I should say, change their retailing model to the so-called agency model, where one of the selling features as to why dealers should be happy to accept this agency model is the enticement to say is you don't have to hold stock anymore and you can operate out of smaller footprints. Well, if you no longer need the working capital and if you no longer have the footprint available, the necessity to quickly be able to move a used vehicle on is even more so. Then it isn't just a nice to have anymore and saving a bit of money. It is actually a necessity to have to do that. So we think we're providing a good workable tool for that. The other point that I would make is that for the dealers who have turned into agents or have accepted the agency model and continue under that, continue to operate under that, need to now find a point of differentiation for themselves, because negotiating on a new price is no longer a point of differentiation. So the differentiator becomes the most efficient way and the best deal one can offer the customer for turning in their used car in the trade-in process. And if you have a better and quicker and more accurate way of doing that, then it gives you an advantage in the marketplace vis-a-vis your brand competitor who's on the other side of town.
So, Michael, who are the target users for Flipacar, and why should each one of them use this system?
Well, the core product Flipacar is really intended for, as I said, for dealer organizations, big and small, to deal with the trade-in and the wholesale process. Now, having said that, COVID has, as we all know, changed the environment somewhat, in that where previously 60 or even 70% of all cars that were traded in were wholesaled back out for various reasons. Could be financial reasons, could be that the retailers have particular policies of only keeping very young cars, whatever the reason might have been. But the lack of availability in new car stock has also led, obviously, to a pressure in the used car market. And dealers are now only selling out 20 to 30% of their cars rather than the 60 or 70% previously, because it's the only way to hold on to any sort of inventory. I mean, I know of cases as to where dealers have changed their policy from holding on to only up to 3 years and 60,000 kilometers, and are now holding on to vehicles up to 7 or 8 years old and 200,000 kilometers, because it's all that there is that they can actually retail back up through their used car yards. So that's in the first instance who we on one hand targeted, but we've recognized this change in the environment. And with this change in environment, we thought, well, what else can we do with this tech? So we thought that the ease of loading cars onto the platform can easily be also applied to customers themselves. So we thought, well, we don't really, at that point, don't want to be a retail organization. What we really want to do is here's a chance to give larger organizations such as finance companies or no-wage lease companies a tool for the return process of when the cars are coming to the end of lease, and therefore also make that a customer retention tool. So rather than simply sending out, and I'll put it plainly, an EDM of some description and say, if your car is up for renewal in the next 3 months, let's have a conversation about that. The leasing company can actually send a widget to the customer to download the app, put the car onto the app, take pictures as pre-prescribed, and start evaluating the shape that the car is in, and start a conversation around that. Remarket it or pre-remarket it if they choose to do so. And through that process already have an idea as to what they can offer the customer prior to the lease being finished in order to retain the customer as a leasing customer for the next car. Now, finance companies don't really care what brand you finance, but what they are interested in is making sure that they have a conversation with you about going into the next car and helping you helping you in that process. So that is in the current environment, organization license like lease companies, like finance companies, but also like mid to large dealer groups can use this white label ability to create a customer retention communication means that is just a bit more interesting than simply sending out an EDM. And certainly also more convenient for the customer, because the customer can almost self-value their vehicle. They don't have to go drive across town. They don't have to go have a quote-unquote stranger, if you will, pour all over the vehicle. You can start the process from home. The only effort really that you need to make is take the pre-prescribed pictures that we prescribe one should take, which we do to have credibility for the app with the potential bidders. In other words, we are asking the whoever is loading a car onto the app for 12 specific pictures that include all four wheels, that include the quarter panel, that include a picture of the dashboard with the engine running, and all those sort of things that allow a potential bidder on that car enough good solid information to make a solid judgment on what that car might be worth.
That's quite clever, having the engine running, because that way you can see any check engine lights or the service warning lights coming up. That's very clever.
Yeah, it's actually something I'd never thought of, because you're always thinking of the exterior damage. But Mark, you make a good point to have that engine light or anything showing from there. Michael, how easy is it to use?
Well, typically, if you can easily load the car onto the app within less than 5 minutes, and the process of bidding out is just a push of a button. We allow the car to be on the platform for 24 hours after it's listed, and then it goes back into a holding pattern. The idea being that the user, particularly the bidder, knows the car is only on there for 24 hours, and create some competitive tension for that reason. What we try not to be and don't want to be is yet another listing service. There are plenty out there who do that. No sense in trying to compete in that. We wish to be a trading service, and typically the bids tend to be accepted actually way before the 24 hours are up. Now, most people get, particularly in the current market environment, reach their reserves quite quickly and try for a little while longer and then get on with it. From a bidder perspective, when you're signed on to being one of the bidders, we have 400 at this point in time. You have the option and the choice to filter exactly what you want. If for instance, all you want is BMW 3 Series in a certain spectrum of model years, so we can set the filter to that. And then when somebody lists something like that, you will only get pinged on your phone for when a car like that shows up. And other choices might be only certain model years of certain kind or certain kilometers or whatever. You can set the filters any which way you want. Also, from a wholesaling perspective, you can, whether you're a larger organization like a lease company or whether you're a dealer, you can choose as to what networks you actually want to send the cars to. What most dealers still will want to do is take the usual 5 favorites, ask them to come onto the platform so that they can communicate through the platform with them, might add 2 or 3 more, but have the option that if a car comes in that is a challenge to remarket, and I don't want to mention anything particular here because I know you never know who might be offended when they listen, but it could be a model that is not very popular, that your usual 5 or 6 or 7, for sure I'm going to be interested in anyway, but you don't have the choice to send it to the entire market. So you'll have up to 400 people who will see it, and you have a much greater chance of moving cars that are ordinarily difficult to move through that medium.
So Michael, the settling of the cars, does that get done through the app or do they just do that separate?
What we do is we send then via email and through the app to both parties the relevant information that you would need as a typical stock controller in an organization to be able to load the car onto your system and settle the deal between the 2 parties directly. Now, what we are working on is a direct settlement tool that we will have in market no later than the middle of the year, where you will then have the ability to, what I guess best way to describe as an escrow account, where the buyers can deposit the money and the sellers can then get the money based on certain criteria throughout the process, which gives both parties then a higher degree of certainty, particularly when you're dealing with consumers directly. Then you've got the consumer doesn't know who he's selling to, the buyer doesn't know who he's buying from, but through that medium we'll be able to offer a settlement service. But they will have that available sometime in the middle of the year. It hasn't been an issue so far because really we are in market with the wholesale products, and the wholesalers know each other. They know how to vet each other. They know how to do business with each other. They can do that much better direct than we could try to interfere in that process.
Now, Michael, we've talked about the users. We talked about how easy it is to use. If you were to just sum up, what would be the key benefits of the system?
Well, it is speed. It is transparency. transparency in several respects. In one respect, that you are getting the best price on the day for that particular product. There's no ambiguity. There's no, might have been better somewhere else, or your usual five guys just aren't interested on that particular day, because you can send it out as far as you like in order to get the best price of the day. And certainly the dealer principals through what would we call a desktop control center are able to see as to what goes on in the dealership. In other words, who has taken that car in, who sent it out to get bids, what were the bids on it, and they get that transparency that in most cases dealers today don't have. I mean, that whole trading process tends to be very much a dark art still, with the wholesale managers dealing with other wholesale managers or their usual contacts and so on. Dealer principals tend to not have a lot of transparency on that. This gives total transparency to the owners of the organization. And through the speed of the transaction, really allows them to use the working capital in a more productive manner.
So when we talk about the speed, the transparency, and the best price of the day, and you mentioned about dealer principals. Now, one thing, we're ex-OEM guys, and we've also worked in dealer land. And the one thing we're big on and we love, and we talk about a lot on this show, is data. What reporting is there for the dealer principals, sales managers, and used car managers? And what are the benefits with that?
Well, at this point, the reporting is all about the transactions. In other words, what came in where did the cars go, who bid on them, how many bids did we get on them, and certainly who did we end up settling with, to make sure that from a dealer principal perspective, is if, for instance, not always the highest bidder is accepted. Well, you would ask the question, why is that? You can then drill down on that a little bit. It could be very legitimate reasons, as the highest bidder might be someone who you well know not to be a good payer. Therefore, you take a decision to take number 2 or number 3, or whatever other reasons there might be. But you can ask those sort of questions, and you can be assured that you have full visibility of that, rather than simply saying, "It's okay, well, I know what my guy is doing," and as long as that wholesale area is somewhere in the black, I'm actually okay with it. I mean, that is the usual approach that dealers quite often take. Whereas here you've got this complete transparency in the process. The same transparency you can offer your customer if you wish to do so. For instance, if you wish to build credibility with your customer, while he was test driving the car, you put the car out to market. You can show them what the highest bid on the car is. And you can show the customer that 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 bids had come in. This is where it's at. And so therefore the offer that you're making to the customer is a credible offer. So if you choose to do that from a credibility perspective, that is certainly one of the benefits. Now, one of the things that we will offer in the future, once we have enough trading information under our belt, in my personal view, is we need to be about 12 to 18 months in the market. We will be able to use historical data and real-time data to be able to give organizations who would choose to look into the data a whole number of insights that they don't have today. There are services that try to pinpoint the data for, say, finance companies to set residual values, or OEMs to set as to what cars should be ordered. We will be able to be in a position as to not only tell you what the highest price for any given model is, we'll also be able to tell you that whether the green car gets more bids than the red car or vice versa. Or the answer might be that the green car actually, because it's different, generally you obtain a higher price, but you've got to wait longer for it. Or those sort of intricacies that today everybody has an opinion on, but nobody has actual facts on. We will be able to really pinpoint and make available to the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It gets away the gut feel, and I dare say a lot of people will be surprised with what the data tells.
Yes.
No, I think that's really important. That's just knowing, and I think business is about data, just having it all there and making decisions on that.
Yes.
Now, Marco, if someone wants to learn more about it or wants to get your system, what are the next steps? What do they need to do? How do they get hold of you?
The simplest way is to go to flipacar.com and look at the website. We have several entry levels into the website for franchise dealers, for independent dealers, and for wholesalers, and click through that and understand what is applicable to them, and then take up contact with us from there. Or at that point, simply download the app and sign up to the system and start using it a couple of times and see how you like it. Now, for franchise dealers, my recommendation would be to give us a call if interested, and we would have one of our field guys who are experienced in the industry, not just salespeople, but experienced in the industry with running organizations. Then come and have a conversation about how we can integrate into your existing processes to make your business potentially more efficient. And that's really, I mean, if you wanted to put it that way, is that and Mark, you with your OEM background as well, as I mean, we have been involved in plenty of projects in the past as to where we've had initiatives to go to our dealers and do best practice exchanges, or do some advising on how to streamline processes within the operation on all after sales, front end, parts departments, whatever. And we're taking the same approach in talking to dealers, rather than just going and saying, well, look, here's a cool app, why don't you go use it? Is we're really trying to talk to dealers, particularly dealer principals, about how we can streamline their business in this particular area and make it more efficient and more profitable, both from potentially getting better prices, but also very importantly from the whole process that a used car takes throughout the dealership.
Marco, have you run any best practice scenarios on what do you think the profit improvement percentage could be? Have you run any figures on that?
Not yet, because I mean we're still a little bit too young in the market. I mean, we launched essentially the wholesale product June of last year. I think there's some very promising signs. I think that the most obvious is the lower working capital requirements, simply based on the speed of turnover. And that can for any organization be calculated very quickly. We have to look at as to how long are you actually holding on to these cars before they move on, vis-a-vis 48-hour period.
I think that's been a fantastic discussion and around what the service is. Michael's background, I think that's amazing. I've learned something even today, Michael, that I did not know that you're an ex-spanner. The reason why I say, because I'm an ex-spanner as well, so I always say the best sales guys are ex-after-sales guys. Because we know the car back to front.
The other accusation that sometimes is then made, though, is that puts you in danger of worrying too much about the nuts and bolts rather than the big picture. So you've got to be careful with that as well.
Well, I think it's that whole grounding and understanding, how the vehicle works, dealing with service customers, because I think when you cut your teeth in the service space and understanding that this car is not just a number, it's actually someone's possession and someone's mode of transport. And if understanding that, you can then apply the business processes and practices to deal with that customer. And I think you really nailed it when you said that you did it in an environment where you have to be authentic, because you're dealing with extremely grounded people who can see through the BS and will either do business or not business with you very quickly if they don't believe and trust you.
And you get caught out very quickly, I think. But I think also is what's still very important, and even today, with cars becoming more and more of a commodity, I think one has to remember that a motor vehicle is still, for the vast majority of the population, I'd say 95% plus, the second biggest purchase that they make outside of their home. And I think sometimes some of us, and it's very easy, I think, when you work your entire life in this particular business, is that all of a sudden these cars become too much of a commodity. And with that, and I think with that background, as you just described, is if you understand the fact that there's an emotional attachment, and it's actually different to deal with selling something emotional vis-a-vis something that is just a white good, I think is an important point. Now, what's interesting is one of the experiences that we've had actually is we've been experimenting with letting customers go onto the platform directly. under a label called Deal My Car. That came about because people were drawn to the Flipacar website and then called us and say, can I sell my car? And how can I sell my car? And can you facilitate that from customers? So we said, okay, we'll create a vehicle for that. So through this Deal My Car, which was still in the testing phase a little bit, so it's been very much a soft launch. People find us and then go through the process. But what's interesting in that is that the process is so quick and efficient, all the way from downloading the app to loading the car on and then going out and getting bids from dealers, that we're actually being challenged with people taking the final step to press the button and sell the car, because it's almost that they're getting afraid. Oh, wait a minute, I didn't think it was this quick. I'm not quite ready to do this yet. And so this emotional attachment that you're talking about is very much driven home in that for us. And one of the things that we are now trying to address is to say, okay, let's set the expectation right for customers who want to do this, as they start this process, to understand that when they finish the process, that's what they're going to end up, and not take the intimidation of the speed out a little bit. So in a way, the app is actually too good in that sense, but it all has to do with the emotional attachment to the product and to the cars.
Now, Michael, do you vet the buyers in any way? Or do you have a rating system where they can be rated so that you know if you can trust them or not?
Two things we do. First of all, we only accept dealers. You must have an LMCT and an AVM. That's it, as part of the sign-up process. Also, as part of the sign-up process, because we charge the successful bidder $100. That is our revenue model. We ask them for their credit card or invoicing details. So that is from a vetting process is what we do with them. Then, through the app, after a successful transaction, both parties have the opportunity to rate each other. The buyer can rate the seller in terms of how accurate was the description on the car. The seller can rate the buyer on just a couple of key points, one of them being the reliability on payment, and the other one being the speed upon which they then came to pick up the car.
Now, thanks, Michael, for coming on the show. I think it's a fascinating story that you have shared with us. Even the Michael Winkler story, just talking about your time initially as a tech out in the West, the Wild West, realistically in the US, in Nevada, in Reno. So, and cutting your teeth with what is very much a fundamental grassroots audience that will pick an authentic person from someone who is not authentic. So you've really crafted you've mastered the craft of the automotive industry through a very buoyant environment, being the US, and then having the premium brand experience with Porsche. So you really know your stuff, and spending time in a number of countries leading a very significant brand. And then taking that knowledge across into this new product being Flipacar, where you've identified a gap in the industry, and a gap that was there before COVID, but it's a different gap that's there right now. Before there was an oversupply of used cars, now there's an undersupply. But your solution actually fits in both circumstances perfectly. So it actually addresses the problems of getting stock or disposing stock, and also getting the most effective price and having speed. Because when we look at the key features and the strengths of what you offer with Flipacar, is you first and foremost establish price, but it's a trusted price. You have speed, so it's fast. It's not a listing service. It's a clearance. You're selling. You're there to be transactional. So it's there for a finite period of time, and 24 hours brings the buyers out, because they know that vehicle won't necessarily be there after the 24, or maybe not even for the full 24. So the benefit there is it's fast, it's transparent, and also it improves cash flow. So working capital is minimized because you're getting that cash flow in and out straight away. You're not having inventory tying up your cash while you wait for it to be prepared and sent off to a remarketing house. So the benefits are very much for dealers, but it's also a huge benefit to leasing companies, and particularly when now we have user choosers, and novated leases are such a big part of the new car and existing car market. So novated operatives bear the risk for the residual value. So they'll want to know, what is my car worth? And you talk about that experience. It's one thing to have, a guide, but this is a genuine guide of someone who's prepared to pay for your car now and at this price. But they don't have to go down to a inspection place. You've got the app that makes it easy. You show them what photographs to take, even with the engine running, the dash. So the bidders can buy with confidence that there aren't any hidden gremlins like check engine lights or other issues that are going to cause problems in the remarketing of that vehicle. So it is very transparent for seller, but very transparent for buyer. So, and that's why there is that trust and confidence that the process brings to what has been a very analog and clunky process. So you've really brought it into the digital space and digital world. So leasing companies, novators, dealers, but also for customers. So when a customer's there test driving the new car, the dealer can upload those pictures and they can outline straight away what the customer's car is worth. So when the customer comes back, the customer's emotionally attached to their old car. They want the best price possible. So there is a reservation out there that they're not getting the best price, they're getting lowballed with their trade-in. Well, a proactive dealer can use your system and show quite quickly, this is how many bids I've had on your car while you're driving it. These are the photographs of the car, so it's in the best condition because you've brought it here. These are the best prices. So it takes away that, am I getting dudded? So it also gets rid of that post-sale dissonance or seller's remorse that they've traded their car feeling they should have got more for it. So it's very clear that they've got the best price. And the fact is, it's so easy to use. Within 5 minutes, you can have it up and running, and the listing's on for 24 hours, so it's really quick to get things transacted. And you can get it out to 400 people if you really wanted to get tenders. So it really is a great process. So speed, transparency, best price on the day, and then there's a dealer reporting, so the DP can actually see what's going on in his used car business or her business. They can see who are the bidders. They can choose who they want to do business with for whatever reasons, whether they're slow payers or good payers, etc. And it's really easy to find out because what operatives and people who want to get involved can just look you up on your website at flipacar.com. So it really is a simple process that brings a clunky part of buying and selling cars into the 21st century and gives everyone confidence and builds trust and just makes life so much easier. I think it's a no-brainer. Sadly, most OEMs just look at the new car sale. They don't really look at the true whole of life, which is that used car value impacts in a normal market how much discount you have to give at the front end. And then it also impacts on the advice that the FMOs are giving to clients on which car to buy, as you rightly point out that it becomes more commoditized. So a Nissan Navara versus a Isuzu Ute, the two become very similar. Well, hang on, which one's got a better residual value? Therefore, my monthly payments are going to be lower on this versus that. And then how do you? They are the key elements that often get lost so many times.
Well, it's interesting. This whole idea of, I guess, also transparency is that. I used to typically manage the wholesale manager and hold him to a target of somewhere between, on average, between $300 and $500 per wholesale car. I mean, if the wholesale department made between $300 and $500 a car, I felt that I could be reasonably assured that it's fair market, it works, that the new car department is not penalized too much. I could be assured that we're not losing new car sales because we're too hard, and so on and so forth. Both numbers these days tend to be between 1,000 and 1,500 without the guys even trying. And dealers are now taking the view that, well, just to your point about the changeover and the right changeover, Mark, is that dealers are taking the view, well, if it's that good, it's sensational, I don't have to worry about it anymore. Well, they could be making 2,500. Or conversely, could be doing a much better job and having an even larger order bank out the front because they're not being competitive enough at that 1,500 number even. So it's. I mean, I think it's exactly as you said earlier. Is the system actually it works both in a oversupply market as well as much as it does in an undersupply market. because it's the best way to establish market value. It's just that simple.
Yeah, Michael, thanks very much for joining us. It's been a fascinating discussion and really interesting hearing about what you got to offer the market.
All right. Well, thanks very much for having me. And I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for listening today. Hopefully you got as much out of the conversation with Michael Winkler from Flipacar as we did. It's an amazing product that makes a lot of sense in the current state and also in the future state when stock starts to loosen up.
Now, if you enjoyed what you heard, subscribe to our channel by hitting the bell below on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn, and you can also come to our website, autocurrents.com.